Hey everyone, I am Joelle. I am here at the Bodybuilding.com headquarters with our Bodybuilding.com All Access Challenge Series winner. She is down 100 pounds on her journey, and I'm super, super excited to have her here and take her through a full body workout. So we're gonna be doing a little bit of lower body, a little bit of upper body, some exercise tutorials, and I'm super excited to take you along for the ride. Ready to get started?
Ready.
Cool. So we're going to do some supersets today. So the number one exercise that we're going to start with is dumbbell goblet squats. And from there, we are going to superset with dumbbell hip thrusts. So I'm going to be walking Tanya through some of the technical aspects of a squat, of a hip thrust. I'm going to demonstrate. She's going to do them along with me. We're going to mostly go for a rep range between 10 and 15. But if you guys have any questions along the way, please let me know and feel free to comment below and ask. All right, ready for some goblet squats?
Ready.
Cool, so I'm gonna have you grab this 20-pound dumbbell, and I'm gonna grab this guy. So for our goblet squat, we want the dumbbell to be up at our chest, in between the palms of our hands. We're gonna set our feet to about a little bit wider than hip width apart. Okay, you could actually come in a tiny bit, you're a little wide, good. Toes pointed slightly outward. And we're gonna keep our chest upright, drop down into this squat. We wanna get to about 90 degrees, good, and stand right back up. When you stand back up, we wanna squeeze your glutes, okay? So we don't wanna arch back, we don't wanna hyperextend, but at the very top, try to squeeze your butt, okay? And then back down. So we're gonna go for 10, okay? So this is 2. Perfect. Awesome. Squeeze that butt at the top. Anyone keeping count? I think this feels like about 10. I forgot to count. All right, cool. So with our superset, we're gonna go into hip thrusts next. So we're gonna go to a flat bench. We'll go grab this one. You want me to stay here, or you want me to pull it over? So we're gonna drag this guy over here, and I actually want us to get a side view here so our viewers can see some of what we're talking about in terms of technique. So a few pointers with a hip thrust, right? We're gonna get down here on this bench. Ideally, upper back is gonna be on the bench. Now, depending on how tall you are, depending on how long your legs are and so on, you might need, some people use an aerobic step instead of a bench here if they need it to be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. We're gonna use a bench for the sake of ease right now, but the ultimate goal here, we're gonna do this with just body weight. We'll see how that feels, and then we'll add a dumbbell. But we're gonna come down, and we just wanna use our upper back as the anchor. And then instead of using necessarily like your feet or your back to lift you, you ultimately want to squeeze your glutes, and that is going to lift us, okay? So if we look in the mirror, we should see a nice 90-degree angle here. We should be at 90 degrees, and that is what we want. So with a hip thrust, it can be a little bit of a technical movement. We do want to make sure that we keep our chin down and tucked. That's going to help keep our glutes engaged. And we want to keep our feet flat on the ground. Make sure you're not coming up onto your toes or up onto your heels. Feet are stable, butt is down. Arms are awkward. They could go wherever you want. Sometimes people do hands behind their head. Sometimes people have them on the bench. I often hold them in front of me. If I have a barbell for a hip thrust, my hands are usually on the barbell. But for the sake of this, we're just gonna come up and down. So squeeze up to 90 degrees. And what you wanna focus on here is getting your glutes into a posterior pelvic tilt, okay? So a lot of people complain when they have back pain with a hip thrust. And if you are having that back pain during a hip thrust, it might be because you're in an anterior pelvic tilt instead of a posterior pelvic tilt. So an anterior pelvic tilt means you're kind of standing like this, right? It's that like Instagram sort of, posing situation that we all know and love. But if you are in that hip thrust and your back is arched, you are going to feel back pain. So what we want to do in that hip thrust is tuck your butt, tuck your tailbone underneath, and that's going to eliminate that back pain. And it's also going to make sure that we are engaging the glutes as much as we can. So I'm going to have you come over here first and do this with body weight. So we're going to get your upper back on the bench. Okay, good. And we want to get your feet at 90 degrees. So we're going to get your feet under your knees, good. I'm just gonna shift your feet here. Good, okay? And you're gonna come down, try to bring your butt down to almost the ground, and then you're gonna squeeze your butt to get to 90 degrees. Good. So you see this bench is actually a little bit high for her. That's okay for the sake of this right now, but normally we want the body in one straight line. So if we need to go down a little bit in bench height, we can do that, but for the sake of this is totally fine. Good, how's this feel? Good. Squeezing your butt? Good, okay. Come back down, and then squeeze right back up to 90 degrees. So see, her legs are at a nice 90-degree angle. Like I said, the bench is a little bit higher, so we're not quite flat. That's okay. Form is still looking really good. Her chin is down, keeping glutes engaged. Good, come back down. Think we could do 10 of those? Mm-hmm. Cool, let's do it. 10. Good, 9. Keep your glutes engaged the whole time. 8, good. 7, good. 6. Remember, try not to arch that back. Keep your butt tucked. Good. Good. 3. 2 more. 2. 1. Good. How's that feel?
Good.
Glutes burning?
A little, yeah.
Good, good. All right, cool. So come back up. We're gonna go back to our goblet squat. So now that we know exactly what we're doing with the hip thrust, how to execute, we're gonna go back to that superset. So we're gonna do that goblet squat, and then we're gonna go right into hip thrust. Are you comfortable adding weight in the next round?
Yes.
I think you could do it. That looked easy for you. Cool. So we're gonna do our goblet squats again. Let's shoot for 10 reps of this, and then we'll go back to hip thrusts, and we'll shoot for 10 reps of the hip thrust, and we'll use that same dumbbell, and we're just gonna hold it onto your lap.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're gonna come down, good. Try to control the way down so that you're not just flying down into the hole, good. And squeeze through your glutes. So when you're doing this goblet squat, I want you to think about corkscrewing your heels into the ground and pushing up through your heels, but still keeping your knees driven outward. One more. Good, cool. So, you give me this dumbbell. You're gonna come back down to your hip thrust position. Good, upper back on the bench. And we're gonna take this, and you're just gonna kind of hold it steady on your hips. Okay, does that feel all right? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So we're gonna come back down, and same thing that we were doing. Yep. Come up, good. 90-degree angle at the knees, chin is down, hips are tucked. Good, and squeeze those glutes. So try not to come up. Do you see where your quads are? When you come up, I want you to see where your quads are. Try not to get your upper body higher than your quads, okay? So in one line, good, right there. So when our body and our torso comes up higher than our quads, we start to hyperextend the back, and that's where people are encountering that back pain. So we want to avoid that. Good. Squeeze those glutes, push through your heels. Good. Good. All right. Ready? I'll grab your dumbbell. Cool. Okay. Whew.
We've got a question coming in from YouTube, and this is relevant because of how much weight that Tanya's lost.
Yeah.
What is the best way to lose fat?
You want to answer that? So what has worked for you? What has been a major change that you've made that has helped you encounter success?
Well, diet change.
What about diet change? What kind of changes were you able to make that you felt like made the biggest impact?
No carbs, or very low carbs, eating more healthier carbs, vegetables.
Okay, so to touch on that, something that tends to be a misconception when it comes to weight loss is that we need to go very, very low carb. And that's not necessarily true. We don't necessarily need to go super low carb. Anytime someone wants to lose fat, we need to be in a caloric deficit. So being in a caloric deficit means that we are consuming less calories than we need to maintain our current weight. So if if we decrease the amount of fat that we're consuming or we decrease the amount of carbs that we're consuming, that can make up that calorie deficit. We could also burn more calories via cardio or weightlifting, and that would also help to make up that caloric deficit. So while lowering the amount of carbs that you were eating might have worked for you, it's not necessarily lowering the carbs that resulted in the weight loss. It was lowering your caloric intake overall. So this was something we were actually talking about at breakfast this morning. The major thing that you changed was learning portion control, right? And so that's the biggest part of this, is that anytime you are wanting to lose weight, we don't need to cut out all our favorite things. We don't need to cut out our favorite cookies and pizza, and we can't, we don't need to say no to everything. We just can't say yes to everything, right? You can have anything, but we can't have everything. So we do want to make sure we're in a caloric deficit if fat loss is the goal. So ultimately that means controlling your portion sizes and just eating a little bit less. It doesn't mean you can never have Oreos again. It just means you have 2 Oreos instead of the entire sleeve of Oreos, right? So portion control, I would say, is the absolute #1 thing that we could do to make sure that we are in a caloric deficit. Ready? One more set of squats and hip thrusts? Yep. I have your dumbbell. Here you go. All right. I'm going to try to count this time because I keep forgetting. I just keep going until it feels like 10. All right. So we're going to come back down. Good. You keep going. I'm going to talk about form real quick. So you keep going. We have those feet pointed outwards. Her chest is upright, which we want. We don't want to end up leaning forward. So chest is upright. She's coming down to about 90 degrees, which is awesome. Good. We don't need to go below 90 degrees. A lot of people think that they have to get super low to the ground. 90 degrees is a great place to be, and pop back up after. Good, drive through those heels. You see that her knees are staying outward. A lot of people, when they squat, they start to get this action. This is called valgus, and we want to push those knees back out. That typically means that there's a major glute imbalance. You got your 10?
Got my 10.
You counted?
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay, good. Come over here. Okay, so we're gonna step back up for our hip thrust. And this is our last set of hip thrust.
Hey, Joelle, Kimberly from YouTube, this is related to this. Exactly where should the bench be by the shoulder blades to ensure correct form?
Good question. So typically you, I would say at like right where your scapula are is a good place to be. You can go ahead, hon. You want your scapula on the bench. You want your upper back on the bench. I think the biggest issue that people run into is if the bench is too high or too low. I would say it's above your mid back, but it's not so high that it's at your shoulders or it's on your neck. So I would say almost if you know what low bar squats are, where the bar is being held at the base of your traps, that's a good spot to be. So mid to upper back, I would say. It's more so upper back than mid back, but I mean the middle of your upper back is what I'm trying to say. Good. Now take this. So I'm just gonna pop onto this bench quick to show you. So a big issue that people do is having the bench too low, and then you could see my range of motion is restricted, right? I can't do a full hip thrust if my back is, if the bench is this far down. So you really want it at your scapula, which is your shoulder blades. So you could kind of feel your shoulder blades right underneath the bench, and that is a really good hinging point. Good question. Cool. All right, next off, we have a shoulder superset. So we are gonna do some dumbbell standing shoulder press. I'm gonna talk about some key technical points for us, and then we're gonna go into a superset with a lateral raise. So the shoulder press is gonna be a little bit heavier, and then when we do the lateral raise, we're going to decrease the weight a little bit because most people are not gonna be able to lateral raise the same weight that they are pushing overhead. So, let's have you grab a dumbbell that you feel comfortable shoulder pressing with. Any idea? We could always change weight if we need to. So why don't you start with the 10s? We could always go up in weight. I'm gonna grab 15s here, and we're gonna shoot for 10 reps. So, to get the hair out of my face. All right, so we're gonna come up. Okay, so when we do this, we wanna keep our core super tight, we wanna keep core engaged, and we wanna come down to about our ear height. Good, so you should see kind of a nice almost 90-degree angle with the shoulders and the arms, and then push back up overhead. Okay, come down, good, and up. So we're at 3, let's go to 10. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, cool. So we're gonna drop these down and we're gonna go into lateral raises. I'm gonna grab another weight here. So for a lateral raise, and I'm gonna let you use these, I'm just gonna demonstrate quick. So with a lateral raise, something that a lot of people have an issue with is letting their traps take over. So what we see there is people go to do their lateral raise and their necks are all big and popping out and they're like, ugh, right? This is the bodybuilder lateral raise. What you actually want to do to make sure that we're doing this the right way and we're actually isolating your deltoids and not your traps is try to roll your shoulders back. And what we're doing when we do that is we're retracting the scapula, retracting and depressing the scapula, and that's gonna let our traps not take over so that we are isolating the delt, right? So you see a difference here between this when it's all delt and then when my traps are hunched forward, right? And then my traps take over. So we wanna roll those shoulders back so that we retract the scapula, the shoulder blades, depress them, so put them down, and now focus on that side raise. And we want it to kind of feel like we're punching outwards. And that's how that lateral raise should feel, okay? All right. Okay, so we're gonna bring those scapula back. Good, so roll back, good. Shoulders down, try to relax your shoulders, good. And now come up, just to the side, good. So you can bring those weights a little bit more in front of you. It's gonna feel a little bit more comfortable, good, if you're here. It's okay to have a slight bend in the elbow. It's gonna take a lot of pressure off. When your arms are too straight, it tends to put a lot of pressure and tension on your elbow, so don't be afraid to have that slight bend. Good. So see her traps are not popping up out of her neck. She's got a super slow and controlled movement. Very, very slow, sorry, my fault there. Good. How's that feel?
Good.
Good.
Kenzie on YouTube asks, is there anything particular that we should be doing with breathing? Is there a pattern or anything?
Great question. So there is something that we do when it comes to breathing is typically on something like a heavier lift. It depends on what your goals are. For instance, a power lifter is gonna use something called a Valsalva maneuver, and that's where they're actually holding their breath a little bit to increase intra-abdominal pressure, and that helps to actually stabilize the core. Something like a lateral raise where it's not a very, very heavy lift, it's not a power lift or a power movement where we really need to focus on extreme strength. But ultimately, if it was something like a squat, that you might have noticed me doing in the goblet squat when I'm not talking, is typically I'll hold my breath at the top, do the squat, and then exhale at the bottom. So you actually wanna keep your breath in you for the heaviest part of the exercise, and then exhale after the rep. And that's something that you might find to be a little bit more helpful for you in an exercise. So let's say for a shoulder press, you'll probably notice that if you try to exhale on the push, it's a lot harder, and that's because that intra-abdominal pressure is something that helps us to keep our core and our spine stable. So if we kind of hold our breath as we're pushing and then exhale at the bottom of the rep, that can help with our strength a lot. So you could give that a try. Ready? So grab your shoulder press weights. We're gonna go up for another 10 reps, okay? So I'm gonna do a few, and then I wanna take a look at what Tanya's doing here. So come up, back down to 90 degrees, and back up. Good, so keep going. I'm gonna take a look at form here. Good, arms look good. So something I'm gonna have you do is spread your feet a little bit so that your legs are underneath your hips, good. And the other thing I want you to focus on is tightening your core. Okay, so again, remember I was talking about that posterior pelvic tilt, right? We don't want to be like this in a shoulder press. We don't want to have this arch going on because it's going to hurt our back. So we want to tuck things in, tuck the pelvis. Don't worry about your butt, it's fine. Keep your core tight and then push up overhead. But we're going to have a lot more stability if and this is why I corrected Tanya's feet here. You're going to feel a whole lot more stable if your feet are apart, core is tight, and then we're pushing up overhead as opposed to butt sticking out, right? Feet in. You're just not going to be as stable. So we want to kind of get in an athletic stance. I always tell people, to think about if you were playing a volleyball game or a basketball game, you wouldn't just be like standing on the court like this, right? You'd be like in ready position, right? Ready for the ball to come to you. So in any exercise, we kind of want to be in this ready position of feet are out, core is tight, chest is upright, and then go from there. Good, how'd that feel?
Good.
Okay, let's drop, let's do those lateral raises.
Adriana asked, you must have read her mind because she asked, is it okay to use a wide stance? I tend to arch my back more when my feet are close together.
Yes,
So wide stance,
absolutely.
more stable.
Absolutely. So with a wider stance, you're absolutely going to be more stable. You're just setting yourself up for more stability within that exercise. Absolutely. All right, let's see those laterals. So again, feet are apart, good. Scapula are back and retracted, chest is up, and now we're just going to isolate that delt. Good. Awesome.
Any good alternatives if you don't have access to a gym to do this workout?
Resistance bands would be a great alternative. If you are working from home or working out at home and you don't necessarily have a set of dumbbells. I have a client right now that's traveling and she's like, I did the workout in my hotel with literally like my luggage, my suitcase. So anything you can do to use weights if you're traveling and you have a suitcase with you. Typically if I travel and I know I won't have a gym, I at least try to bring like a set of resistance bands with me. But hey, body weight squats, still a great exercise. Body weight hip thrusts, still a great exercise. And there are plenty of things that you could do. Like, listen, take your almond milk and a bunch of bananas, and you could do lateral raises with those. I won't pass judgment. So literally anything. I always say resistance bands are a really good way, and they're super easy to travel with if you don't have access to a gym. But there are a ton of exercises that you could do literally with just your body, right? Think lunges, squats, push-ups. There are so many exercises that we could do without any weight. So do not let that limit you at all. Ready?
For those people just tuning in, what are you doing here at headquarters?
What am I doing here? I'm I'm here for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason I am here is because this is Tanya. This is our Bodybuilding.com all access challenge winner from the challenge series that we did. So she is here. I am here at Bodybuilding.com headquarters. They flew us both out so I could take Tanya through a workout and give her some prizes for winning. She's down 100 pounds. So I was super excited to take her through a workout today, and that's what I'm doing here. So it's super good to be back, and thanks for tuning in. Last set, right? Did we do 2? I think that was 2. I think we have one more shoulder set. Okay, I'm gonna do this one with you. Nope, not this one. Okay, so we'll come up. Good. And another way that we could always make this harder is slowing down our tempo. So we could slow, pause for 2, and then push back up. So slowing down the eccentric can make the exercise a lot harder. So we're gonna do a 3 count, 2, 3, pause for 2, and up. Good. And anytime you need to make an exercise harder, that's a great thing to add. So let's say, you're stronger than the dumbbells you have access to. Add in some tempo changes, and that could really help to make your exercise a little bit more difficult.
Angel on YouTube asked, how important would you say mobility is when it comes to lifting weights?
Ooh, good question. So mobility is super important. You don't want to be that immobile bodybuilder, right? Some people get they're so big and jacked, right? But they can't move and they can't wipe their own butts. So we want to make sure that mobility and dynamic stretching are all things that we really are paying attention to. So maybe another day I could do a mobility workout with you guys. We don't have time necessarily to focus on that today, but mobility is super important. We want to make sure that we are stretching the muscles. We want to make sure that we are able to move like an athlete. It's one thing to look like an athlete, but can we actually move like an athlete? So we want to make sure that joints, tendons, muscles are in a mobile enough spot that we are able to have a good quality of life and do whatever it is we need to do in order to move in a healthy way. Okay, lateral raises, last set. Okay, let's do it. Good. She's in her power stance. Her feet are apart, her core is tight. She's not arching her back. Isolating those delts, good. Perfect. So I'm gonna do something. I want you to keep going. I'm gonna resist you a little. So fight my arms, good. So this is another great way to add a little bit of tension. If we're not necessarily ready to go up to 10-pound dumbbells, we could stay at 5, but I'm gonna resist a little bit, and this is a good thing to do with a partner exercise. That will just make it a little bit harder. Good. Cool. Awesome job. Cool, we could put those down. So, one of the things that Tanya mentioned to me that she wanted to do was get better at push-ups. You mentioned to me that you want to do a push-up challenge at your gym. So what does that involve, the push-up challenge?
Well, they're doing 100 push-ups a day for the month.
Okay, so 100 push-ups a day for the month. And Tanya's like, hey, I won the Bodybuilding.com challenge. I'm trying to win my gym challenge now and do this push-up contest. So I wanted to take us through a little bit of a push-up tutorial. And so I'm gonna go over to the Smith machine in a minute because I wanna show you guys a great way to modify a push-up, because I know a lot of people, especially women, have trouble being parallel to the floor and doing a full ground push-up. So if you're not quite able to do full push-ups yet, I have a really good modification for us. So come on over. All right, so this is a Smith machine. And as you can see, we have all these different notches on the Smith machine. And so really great thing about a Smith machine, I know sometimes they get a lot of heat for not being a regular squat rack, but there's still a lot of great things that we could do on a Smith machine. And so one of the things that I want to show you is how we can modify a push-up until we can eventually get down to the ground onto a floor push-up. So something that we can do with a Smith machine push-up is modify the height that we are doing it at. So this is going to change our range of motion. This is also going to change the tension that we are putting on the chest and the shoulders. So if we start with the bar higher, you're gonna see we're gonna get our arms a little bit wider than shoulder width. Depending on how much chest versus how much tricep action we want, we could bring those arms in, or we could keep them a little bit wider. For the sake of this, I'm gonna just go where the knurling is on the bar here. And so if we're newer at push-ups, this is a great place for us to be, right? Core is steady, body is in one straight line. If we try this and we're like, hey, this is too easy, then let's take it down a notch. Okay, and so when we take it down a notch, now the bar's a little bit lower, you're gonna see that I'm able to go a little bit further. And of course I could scoot my feet out as well to make things a little bit harder, but ideally we want this bar to end up lining up at mid-chest. So we're here, and do as many as you can, right? We can shoot for 10 reps. And then again, if this ends up being too easy, it's like, hey, I'm gonna move down a little bit. And so the number one thing that's gonna keep someone progressing in the gym is progressive overload. So that means that every week we are either adding weight, or we are adding reps, or we're adding tension, or we're changing range of motion. So there needs to be something. You could do the same exercises over and over and over week after week, but we need to change the tension or the intensity of that exercise in order to keep progressing and get stronger. We have to force the muscle to meet the demand we're being placed on it. So now we drop this a little bit lower, and so maybe the following week you try this height and you're like, hey, this feels too easy now, I must be progressing, and so you drop it one notch lower. So then if we're here, we lowered this a little bit, we get a little bit lower, we can go down another notch until eventually we can get all the way down to the ground. So you come on over, let's start higher here. Let's try here and see how this feels. So you're gonna line your hands up, yep. We could be just a little wider than shoulder width, good. Her body is in one straight line. Okay, so see, her butt's not sticking out, her back isn't super arched, she's in one straight line, which is exactly what we want. Good job, Tanya.
Kenzie on YouTube says, good job, Tanya. Proud of you, girl.
Yay! You got a cheerleading team waiting for you. How does that feel?
Easy.
Easy, okay. That is my favorite answer ever. Good, so we know, okay, that's easy. Let's try taking it down another notch. Is that a little harder?
A little harder, yeah.
Good. So now you see the range of motion is a little bit wider, a little bit further. Good. And body is still in one straight motion. See, her hips are not dropping. They're not up. She's not doing like that little kid push-up in gym class, right, with their butt sticking up in the air. Her body's in one straight line. Your personal trainer would be very proud of you, Tony. I hope they're watching this right now. Good. Okay. We'll take a rest period for a minute. Good. Do you think next round we could go down a notch again? Awesome. Have you been able to do the floor push-ups before?
Yeah.
And how many are you getting to?
About 15.
Okay, so we could do, so why don't we work our way down? So we'll go down one more notch and then we'll meet on the floor and we'll do that. Let's do a set till failure. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll take this down one more. Did I move this already? We'll take this down one more notch. And we'll do one here. And again, this is a really great way to just modify your push-up if you are not necessarily comfortable with doing push-ups on the floor yet. Cool. All right, let's hop on this last one. Good, body's straight. So right now, Tanya's arms are a little bit wide. That's okay. If we brought those arms into under her shoulders, we would be doing a whole lot more anterior delt and tricep work. But with them being a little bit wider, we're focusing on the chest a little bit more. Good, good job. Good, keep that body tight. Keep your line straight.
Joelle, this question from
Come
YouTube.
on, come on. Good, 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 good. Awesome. Perfect. What's up?
Do reps matter, or should every set be taken to failure?
Oh, the age-old question. That is a very good question. I would say that your reps are not necessarily going to matter in the sense that a certain rep scheme is not going to necessarily make you grow more than another rep scheme. I know that people typically think that low reps is going to make you grow more than high reps, or low reps for strength and high reps for hypertrophy. At the end of the day, it does depend a little bit on your goal. If your goal is to get as strong as humanly possible, then you don't need to be doing 20 rep sets. Then you can kind of focus on the low rep scheme. But at the end of the day, my mantra is kind of like, just give it your all. I personally love taking sets to failure. I don't necessarily take every set to failure. I might do 2 or 3 working sets, working my way up, and then take my final set to failure. But at the end of the day, as long as you are placing a new demand on the body each week, you are going to force your body to adapt and grow. So that's what I spoke about with progressive overload before, is just making sure that you are constantly adding either reps, adding sets, adding tension, adding a difference in range of motion, adding a difference in tempo, whatever it is. I know, swipe videos are a big thing on Instagram right now, where we see people posting all these sorts of videos, and that's great. There's a lot of great exercise options, but you don't need to be changing your weight, your exercises every single week. You could stick with the same exercises every week, but you need to be adding weight or tension or time or duration or reps. So if you want to progress by adding reps, you absolutely can. Whether or not you want to take those sets to failure is totally up to you. I personally love taking some sets to failure. How about you? Do you like doing things to failure, or do you like sticking to like a 10 to 12 rep range?
I try to go to failure sometimes.
Yeah, try to go to failure. So I would say your first few sets, at least, you don't have to go to failure, but maybe on those final few sets, like I'm under the impression of like, I just want to leave it all on, empty the tank, leave it all at the gym, and that's what I do with taking my final sets to failure. So you ready to do some push-ups to failure? I feel like I gotta put my hair up for this. I feel like the push-up game can't be as good if there's hair in my face, so it's the power bun. Okay, ready? So we're gonna take this set till failure. My bet's on Tanya winning this challenge. Okay, ready? So, core's engaged, hips are tucked, head is down. You keep going. You keep going. I'm going to work with you on form. So I'm going to put my hand here. I want you to try. Good. Hey, that's okay. So that is literally what we call a set to failure. So one of the best things we could do, no, this is actually really good. So this is a great talking point. So something that we can do when we're only getting those few reps, right? A great thing that we could do, come back up into your plank position, and I want you to just resist gravity. So we're going to get all the way down to the ground, but just fight it. Fight it, fight it, fight it until you get all the way to the ground. Good. And then get yourself back up. You don't have to do a push-up. You can just get yourself back up. And now, again, a negative. So we're focusing here on the negative until we get all the way down to the ground. And then you could get yourself up. You could go onto your knees to get yourself back up. And then again, fight gravity. Good. And so that's another really, really good push-up modification when we're not necessarily ready to take a ton of reps to push-ups to the ground. We could do them on the Smith machine, and we could also practice those negatives. And that way we're still working our chest, we're still working the motion of a push-up, and we're building up that strength until we can eventually do full push-ups. So when we are doing that full push-up, and I used to teach high school health and PE, so something that I teach my students is if they're doing it with a partner, put your fist under that person's chest, and you want to be trying to get your chest down to their fist. So that's how close to the ground we should be. Cool? Okay. Catching your breath?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I want to do one last exercise with everyone. We're gonna do an inverted row, and this is another thing that I wanna show you how to modify on a Smith machine, so that if you are a little bit uncomfortable doing rows, or you're not quite ready to do, a row that's super parallel with the floor, we're gonna use this Smith machine for something very similar. So I'm gonna take this weight up here. And so if you're new at doing rows, or you're not quite sure how to go about this, I would always say start with the bar higher. And of course, depending on how high it is gonna be how hard this is going to be. So depending on where the bar is, you might be more or less parallel with the floor. And so we could go here. If this feels too easy, Tanya, we're gonna take it down a notch, right? And so by taking it down a notch means that we have to get a little bit more parallel with the floor. And so then we're here, right? Arms, we'll bring them a little bit tighter. So we want to keep shoulders and elbows in for this. So we don't want to necessarily be out here like we were for a push-up. We want to get our elbows a little bit closer to our body. And we want to squeeze our scapula. So I want you to think about if there was a pencil right in between your shoulder blades here, squeezing back. So like squeeze my hand. Yeah, so that's what we want to do during that row, okay? So let's try this. We'll take it up first. We're gonna get your hands just a little bit wider than where your shoulders are, okay? In terms of grip. Good. So you can kind of just lean back onto your heels a little bit, good. And pull in, good. And so we want to be squeezing our shoulder blades right in here when we pull ourselves up. Good. And notice her body is in one straight line. So her core, her hips, everything is in one straight kinetic chain, which is exactly what we want. We don't want to see a break in this chain because that's where form tends to get a little sloppy. Good. How does that feel?
Good.
Easy?
Yeah, a little.
It looks easy. We're totally going to go up. Okay, good. So we're gonna drop this a little bit because that's too easy. And that's the thing, guys, there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, this is too easy or this is too hard. Let me modify up or down, okay. Good.
That one's harder.
Yeah, that's harder, that's harder. So what we did is further our range of motion. Good, I'm right here. Good. Let's get one more. All the way in, squeeze, squeeze, good. And you could step your feet out. Good. So another great way that we can modify an exercise, and definitely not a bad thing to have someone there with you spotting you, right? You know that like, I'm not gonna drop you. So you're like, okay, I could do 3 extra reps because I know that someone is there behind making sure that I'm not gonna fall. So we could stay at this one, or we could try to go one lower. Up to you, what do you think?
I could try one lower.
So again, we just want to make sure that no matter where we are in terms of being parallel, right? I could get super low. The more parallel I take my body with the ground, the harder it's going to get. So you can kind of stay on your heels here and pull in, okay? And then work yourself back up. Okay, last one. Do what you're comfortable with. If we got to raise it again, then we can, okay? Another way to do this is to bend your knees and try that. So think about pulling in instead of up. So you're trying to pull into the bar. Okay,
Okay.
good. Too tough? All right, so that's what we do. We just take it up one more notch, and then we go back to what we were at. So there's nothing wrong with that, guys. Try it out, see what feels comfortable. It's super good to challenge yourself, but we're not really willing to compromise form in order to make the exercise harder. So if I see that form is struggling or form is breaking, then we say, all right, let's stop that. We don't wanna hurt ourselves. We don't wanna do any damage. So we go back up, and then we make sure that it's something that we're a little bit more comfortable with. Cool. I'll do one more set. All right. And this is our last exercise, guys. We hit legs, we hit chest, we hit shoulders, we hit some glutes. Good, good. And like I said, you can always bend your knees a little bit. Good. If you need to. Good. One more. Keep that body in one straight line. Good. Awesome. Good job. You killed it. She wanted a challenge, so I was willing to give a challenge today. So if you guys have any questions, please let us know. We will be happy to help, happy to answer them, and we'll head back this way.
Here's a question that came in from YouTube. How do I know what workout plan to follow?
Great question. So I would say for starters, that's super dependent on your goals. If you're trying to be a power lifter versus a bodybuilder versus a marathon runner, those are all gonna require a little bit of something different. I would say one of the best things you could do is get the all access pass from Bodybuilding.com. Sorry if that's a totally cheesy answer, but the truth is there are a ton of programs on all access, and it's a lot less expensive than buying, necessarily a coach. And hey, I'm an online coach, and I say that myself. Bodybuilding.com has some really, really awesome challenge programs, and there's a ton that you could try on there. There's Jamie Eason, there's Hannah Eden. So whether you like high intensity or bodybuilding or marathon running or anything like that, there are a ton of programs on there. But ultimately, you want to look for a program that is based on your specific goals, whether that's hypertrophy or fat loss or muscle building or running.
Great. Last question. Where can people find you two?
So you can find me on Instagram at Joelle Samantha. And Tanya, do you have an Instagram you want to share?
It's Tanya Cody.
Tanya Cody.
C-O-T-Y.
C-O-T-Y. So we are both on Instagram. You could find us there. If you watch this, please let me know. Please shoot me a DM. I'm always in my DMs answering questions, talking to people. I love to connect with you guys. So please, if you watch this, let me know. I would love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.
This program was designed to develop your overall athleticism.
We created Mind Body Fit to help women achieve all over wellness. You'll find tons of articles on nutrition, exercise, and even beauty.
Shoulders define your upper body. Just add these 2 workouts into your split each week to build bigger and more defined delts.
With my Kingmaker program, you'll build muscle and a special kind of mental toughness that can overcome any challenge.
With MetaBurn 90, all you'll need is a few dumbbells and 30 minutes or less a day to burn fat and achieve peak fitness in a very short, concentrated amount of time.
Everything is laid out for you in detail.
We're positive you'll find unique pieces that will help you feel your best every single day.
Control your world, but it all starts with you. Only at Bodybuilding.com, all access.